Warning: the following video contains spoilers for Shin Megami Tensei III, 4, and Strange Journey. These games are best experienced blind, and I highly recommend playing them before viewing this video. Lastly, the opinions stated in this video are entirely my own. With that out of the way, please enjoy the video. Shin Megami Tensei IV is a game that I hold in very high regard. I usually recommend the game to new players as it mostly streamlines all the problems that I had with Shin Megami Tensei III Nocturne, but recommending SMT is always difficult. It's a game with a unique tone, atmosphere, narrative, and a crushing dungeon crawling experience in an industry where most games are open world now. Unfortunately, while I love SMT4, it does have some unique problems of its own. Tokyo is easy to get lost in, Smirk was a blemish on a nearly perfect combat system, this series was slowly phasing out dungeons, I thought the endings left something to be desired, and the neutral ending ruined the otherwise incredible pacing. Despite these criticisms, and while not being my personal favorite, I do believe this is the best place to start, and I'm not alone. Before SMT5 was released, SMT4 was the best-selling mainline game in the series, which was always interesting to me. I never had a chance to play the original since I never bought a Switch. This innate interest was bolstered by its reviews from the larger gaming media outlets, and most importantly, the fans. Everyone seemed to love this game. The key takeaways I got from these videos and articles was that SMT5 had the best gameplay while the graphics, level scaling, and overall narrative suffered. Unsure of what these specific problems were, I kept playing Nocturne, SMT4, and Strange Journey while I eagerly waited for SMT5 to release on other consoles. And in typical Atlus fashion, SMTIV Vengeance was announced and I was excited to finally play this game. And now that I've had my hands on this game for a few months and have had some time to let it marinate, I think I'm finally ready to discuss it. Before we get into it, I'd like to level set a few things. 1. This is my first time playing through SMT5. I have never played the Canon of Creation route, and I will address it separately when we get into the story discussion. 2. Most of this video's footage was captured live on Twitch. Feel free to drop by the stream and say hello, where I typically record all my footage live for these videos. With that lengthy preamble out of the way, put your feet up, grab a snack or a drink or dinner like I usually do, and get comfortable while I spend far too long sharing my thoughts on Shin Megami Tensei V Vengeance. As always, let's start with the development team and this project's history. SMT5 was spearheaded by Shigeo Komori. Before directing this game, he was an event planner on the original Nocturne, had written numerous lyrics for the Hoshino Persona games, and is widely known for his work either directing or producing the original Etrian Odyssey games. SMT5 was co-produced by Kazuyuki Yamai and Shinjiro Takata. I discussed Kazuyuki Yamai in the SMT4 analysis review retrospect. I don't know what to call these, but I discussed how he clearly respects Koji Okada and Kazuma Kaneko's vision of SMT. And after experiencing the team's vision with SMT4, I believe that he understands the atmosphere and tone of SMT, so he's cool in my book. Shinjiro Takata, conversely, served as the director of the Etrian Odyssey HD collection, both Devil Survivor games, which I still need to play, and was the production manager with Soul Hackers 2, the original SMT5, and Nocturne's HD remaster. Returning with Kazuyuki Yamai was Masayuki Doi with the demon and character art, and Ryoto Kazuka producing this game's magnificent score. Additionally, Yo Haruki was staffed as the scenario writer for this project. Haruki has a very long history of writing scenarios for games since the original Langrisser, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, on the PS1, but is largely known for their contributions with Devil Survivor, SMT Strange Journey Redux, and the criminally underrated Radiant Historia. Haruki was also supported by Tatsuya Watanabe and Takahiro Yamamoto. While I couldn't find anything on Tatsuya Watanabe, Takahiro Yamamoto has been either a lead or event planner on several Atlus projects like Etrian Odyssey HD Collection, Soul Hackers 2, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Persona 4 Golden, and the Devil Survivor games. With the team established, this is the part where I usually present developer interviews and diaries, but these games aren't exactly old. There aren't a ton of developer articles or interviews out there about SMT5, and definitely not Vengeance. For example, Kazuyuki Yamai did an interview back in 2017 after SMT5 was released where he shared his perspective on the series and discussed why the team leveraged Unreal Engine. I'm assuming we would have had more developer interviews leading up to its release, but I'm sure the 2020 pandemic probably impacted this coverage. Fortunately for us, we wouldn't have this problem 4 years later. Famitsu interviewed Shigeo Komori and Masayuki Doi about SMT5 Vengeance in February of 2024. Their translated interview would reveal Komori and team were surprised how well the game was received. They listened to the positive feedback and negative criticisms before deriving 3 recurring issues. Issue number 1. The story was universally criticized by major gaming news outlets and the fans. Issue number 2. Character development was lacking and poorly executed. In issue number 3, the level scaling introduced an artificial difficulty when fighting higher level demons. Now, without jumping the gun, I can confirm that most of these issues have been addressed in the Canon of Vengeance route. Obviously, I can't comment on level scaling since I haven't played the original, so let's visit a few of Masayuki Doi's comments. Masayuki Doi revealed that he strongly advocated for the Kadistu to be in the game, briefly discussed their mythology, how Yoko was planned for the original release, and, most importantly, said we have prepared a dark and bitter story that emphasizes the essence of Shin Megami Tensei along with its captivating demons. Earlier this year in June, Push Square sat down and interviewed producer Shinjiro Takata and Shigeo Komori about SMTIII Vengeance. Takata said the original SMTIII sold very well on Switch and wanted to shift his priorities to expanding the brand by releasing the game on additional platforms. Takata also claimed the team had been listening to criticism and wanted to enhance the overall experience before its debut on other platforms. When asked about his favorite additions with Vengeance, Komori said the Magatsu rails, the Skyview camera, the ability to save everywhere, and some refinements to the core system helped the game reach new heights. Although the interviews were pretty short, I'd highly recommend checking out the articles if you're interested, which can all be found in the description below. Like I said earlier, there really isn't much out there documenting this game's development. I do think it's helpful, however, to understand leadership's direction and overall goals with this game. One of the things I appreciate as a fan about this team is how transparent they were about the original shortcomings. I'm grateful they're listening to the community and are committed to improving their games. Their approach should spark some confidence in longtime series fans. But Doi's words on creating a story that, and I quote, emphasizes the essence of Shin Megami Tensei is a bit alarming after experiencing the Canon of Vengeance, but we'll come back to this much later. Instead, let's shift into talking about the game by diving into the graphics and overall presentation. In my first impressions video, I celebrated this game being freed from Switch purgatory, and I know I'm not alone. SMTII's visuals were universally praised when the game came out, but the consensus I heard was they'd like to see the game run on other systems. As a friendly reminder, the Nintendo Switch was released on March 3rd of 2017. This system essentially was closer to a PS3 than a PS4 in terms of sheer power. Now, to be abundantly clear, I am not bringing this up to belittle the Switch. I believe it's one of the most innovative and influential consoles we'll probably see in our lifetimes, but Atlus decided to put 2014's Unreal Engine 4 on hardware that was essentially from 2006. This resulted in a heavily compromised experience with blurry images, lower textures, worse lighting, and scaled down effects, and thankfully, this isn't the case anymore. I played this game on PC and it looks and runs great. The particle effects during certain attacks, unique demon skills, Doi's incredible art style, the superb lighting, and smooth frame rate highlight how wonderful this game actually looks, and I'm sure this praise extends to the PlayStation and Xbox versions as well. This is easily the best mainline Megaten has looked in a very long time. If you don't have the hardware or a PC, many of Atlus's best SMT games are largely inaccessible. This leaves many of us with Nocturne, the Hoshino Persona games, and SMTIII Vengeance. I'm just grateful in 2024 I have something to recommend to new fans because as much as I love SMT4 and Atlus's incredible 3DS catalog, handheld games carry this negative stigma preventing people from playing them. I largely attribute this to the lack of hardware accessibility and system ergonomics, but most people love beautiful 3D graphics and I can't necessarily blame them. While I love Strange Journey and SMT4's aesthetics and art design, the extra dimension allows for incredible cinematography, unique use of lighting, more immersive environments, and what many would consider better overall graphics. On the topic of aesthetics, let's talk about SMTII's overall presentation because I'm kind of mixed here. One of the distinct recurring elements commonly featured in SMT is its oppressive, dread-filled atmosphere. In Nocturne, you traverse the vortex world fighting for survival until one of the characters commands your attention. In SMT4, you explore Tokyo listening to citizens struggling to survive while you're forced to make morally gray decisions, and in Strange Journey, you literally confront the sins of mankind while fighting for humanity's survival. In SMT5, this haunting presence is non-existent. Exploring Dot never elicits these emotions. I believe this is because you're running around collecting orbs, constantly platforming, jumping around, and being yelled at by your navigator whenever they frequently discover things. There's also part of me that thinks graphics are partially at fault here. Resource scarcity, technical limitations, and desperation breeds innovation and overall growth. Whenever creatives have a vision in mind and they don't have resources to bring this vision to life, creators are forced to get, well, creative. This concoction of scarcity and creativity led to games like Nocturne, Digital Devil Saga, and Persona 3. And while these games were inexpensive compared to others at the time, the teams leveraged what they had to create these unforgettable experiences. Sure, these environments were much smaller in scope and aren't as aesthetically pleasing as modern games, but if you're willing to look past these graphics, you can find these darker environments brimming with passion and creativity. The overall art direction, occasional lack of NPCs, and this less is more approach makes interactions feel special, spark a sense of wonder and intrigue as you navigate through stages which tend to stick with you longer. And in SMT5, this overall subtlety is missing. To be abundantly clear, I love modern day graphics and most of them handle the atmosphere well. Some of my favorite modern atmospheric experiences are with Alien Isolation, the Dead Space remake, and Amnesia: The Bunker. These games leverage modern hardware to create these deliberately terrifying atmospheres. Conversely, these games are survival horror games, so they don't have to be subtle with their atmosphere like SMT. I have a feeling this is going to be a long video, so I'll get straight to the point. Koji Okada, Kazuma Kaneko, and Eiji Ishida understood something about crafting a haunting atmosphere that's just clearly missing. It's hard to put into words, but you can tell none of them worked on this game, and that's going to be the recurring theme throughout this video. And while this game is lacking in atmosphere, somewhere it clearly isn't is with its gorgeous cinematography. We'll keep this brief because I've mentioned it in several videos now, and I'm sure people are probably getting tired of me talking about it. SMT5 has several scenes that feel like cinematic spectacles to experience. These experiences highlight the scope of world-changing events, provide another lens to pivotal moments, and are something that separates Atlus from its JRPG contemporaries. While I was admittedly lukewarm on the overall tone and atmosphere of this game, an area immediately winning me over was Ryoto Kazuka and Toshiki Konishi's incredible score. Although I liked SMT4's soundtrack, I wasn't in love with it as I was with other scores in the series. SMT5, by comparison, might be one of my favorite soundtracks of the Mega 10 games that I've played. Walking through your high school and exploring Tokyo is accompanied by this soothing guitar track and this subtle ominous tone to it. The third block of Shinjuku has this otherworldly funky piano fusion with words we can't understand. This track beautifully accompanies your traversal of this desolate city. Reaching Ueno feels like the end of an epic as you fight the leaders of Bethel for control of the throne. And when you fight them, or any of the other fights in the game honestly, your ears are blessed with one of the seemingly infinite battle themes this game has. The sheer volume of battle tracks in this game is actually kind of absurd. Bosses, mini-bosses, quests, and abscesses all have their own unique themes that you will be hearing throughout the game. The soundtrack also feels quite unique with it leveraging a plethora of different genres. There's something here for everyone to enjoy. My personal favorites were the Cathedral of Shadows, the Cadiz boss battle theme, the Primordial Goddess battle theme, and the Vengeance for Reclamation battle theme. Some of my favorite music producers in the gaming industry are Nobuo Uematsu, Yoko Shimomura, Shoji Meguro, and Norihiko Hibino. Even if I don't always play their games, I will always listen to their soundtracks, and Ryoto Kazuka is slowly joining these legends in my mind. I would love to buy the SMT5 Vengeance soundtrack if possible, and I'll probably keep an eye on whatever Ryoto Kazuka produces moving forward. With the music covered, let's shift gears into the gameplay. So, if you've seen a few of my previous videos, it shouldn't surprise anyone that I'm largely apathetic to open world games. I feel absolutely nothing for most of them. This animosity began forming when I acknowledged a few recurring elements they're burdened with. 1. Numerous fetch quests. 2. Reliance on excessive collectibles. 3. These games cannot be paced well. And 4. Developers leverage these bloated elements to artificially extend a game's duration. Developers employ these tactics to craft these quote-unquote games with hundreds of hours of content. The issue with this approach is that they don't respect your time. Now, this topic can be a video in and of itself, but what I'm trying to get at here is that most open world games just aren't for me. And with all of that said, I think SMT5 is pretty alright. I saw a lot of reviews describing SMT5 as an open world game, and I sort of disagree with this notion. Dot more closely resembles an open level design rather than an open world. Dot isn't this sprawling interconnected world. Excluding Shinjuku, most of the levels don't have these sprawling open fields for you to explore with tons of variety. Players will spend a majority of their time completing side quests, discovering and riding Magatsu rails, searching for Mimon, discovering leyline founts, destroying abscesses, locating amalgams, procuring relics, and fighting regional bosses, but this is where things get interesting. On the surface, this looks like a regular open world / open level gameplay loop. However, the beauty is with how ubiquitous it all is. Completing side quests obviously rewards you with experience and items, but you're really incentivized to finish these so you can unlock additional demon fusions. Megatsu rails are an excellent method of fast travel that doesn't remove you from the world and provides new access to areas with demon essences, which are used to teach new skills and mimic resistances. Mimon provide you with invaluable glory points you can use to invest in your character. Leyline founts serve as save points where you can teleport to. Destroying abscesses unlocks more miracles for you to purchase with glory. Amalgams are these floating silver boxes packed with glory, and finding relics throughout the world provides items to sell for Maka, which can be used to purchase demons, resources, and additional demon essences. Another impressive feat the team accomplished is with the scope of the levels. As you explore the netherworld, you will come across demons that are the size of buildings and mountains. They're enormous and will attack you when they see you. These colossal demons in Dot's semi-densely populated ruins really make you feel small. Riding through the netherworld on the Megatsu rails show how tiny you really are in the grand scheme of things. Seeing the Nahabino quickly traverse through a massive space really drives home how large these areas are, and can even spark an interest in exploring areas you didn't even know were accessible. When taking a step back and realizing how they've tied exploration to your overall character progression beyond just leveling up and providing you items, it's hard not to be impressed, especially considering Atlus hasn't developed many open world games. They really created this engaging exploration loop, beautifully tying back to SMT's incredible combat system. Exploration in this game is so good that I found myself immediately returning to the game after the credits rolled. Nevertheless, there are a few minor blemishes pertaining to the level design and general tone I'd like to address. With the exception of Ginza, all of these levels are either a straight line, a circle, a dungeon without the engaging exploration loop, or are simple areas lacking any interesting complexity or variety. Minato gets a pass since it's the first level and its chief purpose is to introduce players to new mechanics. However, you're greeted with a linear road forward with a few diverging paths, providing side quests, demon essences, and other stuff to do in the environment. Shinagawa is cool as well since they introduced stage elevation. It has this mysterious red color theme and has you progress through a variety of areas until reaching the ethereal fairy village, and then you reach Ginza or Shinjuku. Shinjuku is my personal favorite level for its variety in level design, narrative implications, and Mara. The bigger problem really is with the canon of creation's Ginza. Ginza leans heavily towards the environmental elevation aspect introduced in Shinagawa and finds you navigating between a high and low path to progress forward. For the entire level, this level, for me personally, really dragged and overstayed its welcome since it didn't introduce anything new. The only aspects of this area I can compliment are the atmosphere and, of course, the narrative implications. Regardless of my criticisms, I think Atlus deserves a lot of credit for persuading someone like me who isn't crazy about open world games to somewhat enjoy this. I think they did a serviceable job transitioning to an open level design from the series' dungeon crawling roots. And while we're talking about dungeons, let's briefly discuss the Demon Tower, Shikan, and the Temple of Eternity. The dungeons in this game are pretty rough, if I'm going to be honest. They're short and very rudimentary compared to other dungeons in the series. I think Atlus realized most of the industry is or has transitioned from dungeons to open levels, so they probably wanted to change with the times. This might sound brutal because this game apparently didn't do anything right, but I think Soul Hackers 2, unironically, had better dungeons than SMT5's. Call these empty or uninspired, but at least they had side quests and NPCs in them that you can interact with. Something I won't defend, however, is the Soul Matrix. Like, yes, let's make fun of that. Honestly, bringing this back to SMT5, it's hard to be critical here. The primary focus was to experiment with open level design and solicit feedback from fans. And while we're talking about feedback, let's discuss how the levels presented in this game do nothing to enhance this game's tone or atmosphere. In the earliest hours of the game, we're informed of this battle between the forces of Bethel and Lucifer for the throne of creation. However, nothing we see until Ginza, which is like 30 or 40 hours into the game, show any sign of this. An area I've covered extensively in my Nocturne and SMT4 videos are how Atlus leverages NPCs and side quests to enhance their overall world building, and for whatever reason, the team decided to mostly drop this. Excluding a few demons alluding to Nocturne's conception and the Bethel HQ members, an overwhelming majority of the NPCs are just kind of shooting the shit and rarely describe what life was like before the war. Most of them are pretty happy and just mind their own business if they don't have a side quest. Not only is this a clear step back from the incredible NPCs from other games, but this creates a tonal dissonance between these demons' behavior with this tumultuous battle between the forces of Bethel and Lucifer that we hear about in the opening. This war for the throne doesn't mean a whole lot when a hair of Inaba wants me to find a Zutanshi to teach them, and I quote, tricks. When you combine this soundtrack's mostly upbeat jovial tone with everyone just hanging out, it's difficult to effectively sell this mysterious, tense, and dark tone the series is famous for. Speaking of the hair of Inaba, let's shift gears towards the side quests in this game. Side quests in this game are a bit of a mixed bag. I'm not sure why they pivoted direction so heavily from SMT4. Most of the side quests flesh out the world and, unfortunately, served a narrative purpose for the neutral ending. In SMT5, they don't contribute to the world and usually hurt the overall atmosphere in my opinion. Excluding experience and items of course, I believe their primary function is to prevent you from fusing specific demons. Nevertheless, I'd be disingenuous if I said all of the side quests were bad. Oddly enough, many of the best quests and NPCs come from Taito and the Bethel HQ back in Tokyo. Taito is home of the leaders of Bethel. While neither route develops these characters exceptionally well, their side quests can provide additional context to them. Meeting Artemis and hearing how she wants to be strong like Zeus, stumbling upon Shiva who's instructing Vasky during the summit, and even stumbling upon Kansu trying to become a Nahobina with Miyazu has the world building that I love. While we're talking about this quest, why why was this a side quest? In both routes, she's a huge motivation for Yuzuru. I'll get into the story more later, but it's wild that they doubled down on this in the Canon of Vengeance by reserving her fate to a side quest again. In the Canon of Vengeance especially, she was far too important to just become a side quest in my opinion. I thought this quest was exclusive to the Canon of Vengeance route, so you could only imagine my surprise when I stumbled upon it in my completed Canon of Creation route save. Having one of the main character's story arcs conclude in a side quest twice, it's genuinely hilarious. Getting back on topic with side quests, SMT4's side quests should be the template for the series moving forward. Using side quests and NPCs to build the world will go a far way in making these levels and environments feel more interesting. Nevertheless, if Atlus wants to preserve SMT5's quest quality moving forward, removing like a third of them so the team can focus on their writing would be my personal preference. To reiterate my point from earlier, quests in this game are a mixed bag. I hope they reassess them with their next major project. Something that should be preserved, conversely, is the enhanced Cathedral of Shadows because this is probably the best it's ever been. Since I already discussed this in my first impressions video, I'm going to quickly sum up my major points. In parallel to traditional and special demon fusions, you can now see all your potential demon fusion outputs from demons in your stock and compendium through the reverse and reverse compendium fusion tabs. These two tabs alone will hopefully prevent players from consulting with fusion charts or calculators to create the special demons they'd like to make. This being accessible in-game will save so much time, and it's an excellent quality of life change, especially in a monster collecting game. SMT4's app system also returns through miracles, which have been largely expanded to fit a wider range of playstyles. Miracles operate on glory, which you can find throughout the world or items as you explore. Lastly, demon essences were also introduced, where you can teach yourself or demons new skills and update your resistances. Demon essences are a great mechanic. The best essences in the game typically have the best skills and most well-rounded resistances. Because of their scarcity and depending on your build of course, they introduced a great decision for players between choosing skills or resistances. These decisions are especially dire in your first run since you have no idea what bosses lay in wait for you. This creates an interesting risk-reward scenario and lets you play the game however you'd like. The updated Cathedral of Shadows is an incredible step forward for the franchise and will hopefully become the new standard for Mega 10 games moving forward. Atlus has done an outstanding job here, and I can't praise the revamped miracle system and the modernized fusion utility anymore. To wrap up the gameplay portion, let's talk about the newly introduced Demon Haunt. The Demon Haunt is an accessible area through leyline founts where you can speak with your demons, provide them with demon boxes boosting their stats, occasionally receive side quests, and converse with Aogami or Tsukuyomi respectively. I really enjoyed speaking with the demons and engaging with the few side quests that I discovered here since they usually tie back to the demon's lore. Interacting with Aogami and Tsukuyomi are really great as well. Hearing Aogami's perspective on things as he tries to understand mankind's behavior is wonderful. Tsukuyomi also receives some great development here as well. He feels more human in the Canon of Vengeance route where he shows remorse while taking responsibility for Yuzuru's fate. Yet, regardless of all these positives, I really don't like the Demon Haunt. First and foremost, demons will randomly request to speak with you throughout the game. They usually tell you they're motivated or something and get a random stat buff. Speaking of random stat buffs, major narrative events will prompt Aogami to speak with you. Most of these conversations result in you receiving stat points for you to allocate. I like this idea of how through reflection and developing a bond, you receive more power. The issue here is with how frequently this happens. I can almost ensure if you're like me who focused on increasing one stat, you will max out one of your attributes before reaching Taito. This would be perfect if Atlus scaled back how frequently this occurred with Aogami. The other criticism I have is with demon interactions, specifically how we're supposed to develop relationships with them. I've rewritten this part a few times, so let's just rip the band-aid off. Demons are expendable, and before you call me heartless, they've been expendable fusion tools since their genesis. Developing a relationship and giving gifts to something that will inevitably disappear is kind of heartless, which is really ironic given the whole context of us talking about SMT, but I digress. This dynamic feels more in line with something you'd see in Pokemon or Persona games. These interactions feel, and I'm so sorry to keep bringing this up, tone deaf and clashes with the overall atmosphere. All of this, in my opinion, just feels out of place. When I think about this inclusion, Takada's words of wanting to expand the franchise immediately comes to mind. I wonder if there are any brand new players to the series that build relationships with their favorite demons and had a hard time fusing them away. Anyways, I don't have much else to say other than too many buffs, and this inclusion clashes with the game's attempted darker tone, I guess. Something I have no reservations with, however, is the incredible combat. This is undoubtedly the best combat has felt in my opinion. Atlus's legendary press turn combat system returns in this game. Now, I would break down how the combat system works and what makes it special, but I've extensively discussed the nuances of this system in my previous SMT videos. Instead, I'd like to focus on the new additions, minor rebalances, and the overall refined system. For those of us who haven't played SMT4 Apocalypse, Smirk has been entirely removed, and thank you Atlus. Another update longtime fans will notice is with buffs and debuffs. Buffs and debuffs in SMT5 function similarly to their Persona counterparts. In SMT5, Sukukaja will only increase one member's accuracy and evasion, while Masukukaja will raise the entire party's stats conversely, and I'm mostly apathetic here. I guess it sucks that you can't raise the entire party's stats for a little bit, but I don't think that this fundamentally changes the combat. Now, what drastically changes the combat are the newly introduced skill potentials and the new cost of magic. All the demons in the game have a unique skill potential where the higher the potency, the less expensive magic is to use. For example, demons that have +2 towards the wind element receive access to cheaper Zon casts, and honestly, I think this is a brilliant change. In SMT games I've been in the past, I kind of stopped looking at demons as a demon and just looked at their stats and weaknesses. This approach is a byproduct of the ability to inherit whichever skills I wanted to, thus transforming them into Swiss Army knives where you stopped thinking after giving them moves. In SMT5, this Swiss Army knife approach is now disincentivized as the system rewards you for tailoring demons towards specific strengths. Furthermore, this system adds another layer of strategy and overall player choice. Players have the agency to choose whether to build a demon around their skill potentials or build around a wide variety conversely. The reduced skill cost will obviously incentivize this first choice, but there are plenty of passive skills you can employ to circumvent this problem, costing you a valuable skill slot. Lastly, the game provides rare items that will increase a demon's skill potential as well. All things considered, I love how well these new mechanics synergize with the increased cost of magic. Magic in this game, honestly, is a bit expensive, but at least you can now build around it. I'd much rather Atlus introduced higher magic costs with skill potentials instead of adding another layer of RNG. To be clear, I love how Atlus provides us with another choice and more agency in this new system. I believe these are very well thought out ideas, and I hope it becomes a staple in the series moving forward. Another addition complementing Atlus's robust system is the new Magatsuhi gauge. After filling this bar, which can be done through a plethora of methods, players get access to exclusive moves that can drastically change the tide of battle. Magatsuhi skills range from guaranteed critical hits, repeating the same move multiple times, fully healing the entire party, doubling the cost of skills for double the damage, extend stat buff turn duration, and the list goes on. These moves are all wonderful and harmonize very well with what I said earlier. It adds another layer of strategy for players to build around. The only minor nitpick I have here is with the boss execution. This might be one of those be careful what you wish for moments, but I love to see bosses with their own unique or access to exclusive boss Magatsuhi skills. After a while, players will instinctually block whenever a boss triggers their Amagatoki critical. This would add a layer of intimacy to each boss, but this is admittedly unrealistic since this game has so many bosses. Regardless, adding like 5 to 10 different Magatsuhi skills would go a far way here, in my opinion. In parallel to these Magatsuhi skills, you can also find or receive Demon Talisman, which have skills that can be accessed when their criteria are met. These are very well animated and incredibly powerful. I'm going to sound like a broken record again, but this is a great addition. The next thing doesn't really have anything to do with combat, but they somehow made demon negotiations fun. I'm not sure if this is a controversial statement, but demon negotiation in some of these games are kind of a mess. Like, you're borderline guessing in half of these interactions. To make these more tolerable, Atlus added gold cards, causing demons to just join you. They introduced a mini game where you can guess a demon silhouette, and if you successfully complete a demon negotiation with no space in your party, the demon will remember and willingly join you later on. These are welcome changes in my opinion. Lastly, the Canon of Vengeance reintroduces your friends fighting alongside you. This mostly impacts the game's narrative, but I wanted to highlight this because I'm just happy that they're back. And most importantly, we can actually control them this time. When you reflect on the mostly successful shift in level design in conjunction with the incredible combat, it's easy to see why this game receives so much praise. From the abscesses to the miracles to talisman to fusion, everything now just feels so ubiquitous. All the mechanics in this game are deliberately crafted and synergized so well that I can confidently say this is the best gameplay loop I've experienced from Atlus. Excluding a few minor issues that can be easily resolved, Atlus has crafted another outstanding loop I'm excited to see develop in their future projects. The next area I'd like to discuss are the Canon of Vengeance and the Canon of Creation story. Before we get into the story analysis, I'd like to remind everyone that if you're enjoying this video, a subscription and a like would go a far way in helping the channel grow. Thanks for your support and back to the video. Alright, similar to the approach I took with the Prey and SMT video, I will discuss a few narrative moments rather than summarizing the entire story, even if I unironically end up summarizing the entire story. I'm assuming if you've watched this video up to this point, I don't need to warn anyone about spoilers. Lastly, since I've never played the original SMT5, I will be discussing the Canon of Creation and the Canon of Vengeance routes separately. Please use the timestamps below to skip ahead to the Vengeance route if you're only interested in that. Without further ado, let's dive into the Canon of Creation. So this might sound weird to say out loud, but I was pretty excited to experience this story. It feels like lots of critics and longtime fans were unanimously disappointed with this game's narrative, and I love me a good trash can. Instead, I experienced one of the most stilted and disjointed narratives I've seen in a while. The Canon of Creation story isn't necessarily bad, but it's definitely backloaded, lacks key context, doesn't have great world building, and severely lacks key character and faction development to leave a truly lasting impact. Before getting into the critiques, let's go over a few of the characters that I really enjoyed, starting with Ichido Dazai. Ichido is immediately introduced as someone with a playful nature. After wandering into a tunnel, he's teleported to Dot where he gets abducted by an angel before finding him in the Diet building. When the team returns to Tokyo, they're almost ambushed by Abdiel before Tao steps in. After saving you, she provides context about the Netherworld and Bethel's fight against Lucifer. Koshimitsu, the Prime Minister of Japan, requests everyone's support as everyone joins Bethel. Because Bethel needs help and Ichido finds his calling here, he becomes a demon summoner with a newfound purpose of protecting Tokyo with his friends. But this wouldn't be an easy transition for him. Ichido struggles with imposter syndrome when Lamu and the demons attack his school. He questions whether he's actually capable of fighting like Yu and Yuzu do. After giving him a pep talk, Lamu abducts Sahori to Shinagawa while the team pursues him. In the midst of saving students with Tao and exploring, you discover Ichido asking Abdiel about her source of power. Ichido develops an appreciation of Abdiel's power and by extension her resolve to God, which is her source of power. Her words resonated with him and began influencing his actions and perspective on things. Later, when the team arrives in Ginza to support Abdiel's efforts, Ichido receives demons from Abdiel for protection, bows in honor, and calls you a saint on existence before leaving. After defeating Cert, Ichido expresses how grateful he is for Abdiel's insights and the demons before questioning whether Koshimitsu's leadership is just. With the Demon King defeated and Lucifer's army destroyed, Bethel's union begins to crumble as each faction wants to pursue the Throne of Creation for their own reasons. Koshimitsu tells the team before the summit that he's planning to defect from Bethel and pursue creating a world ruled by the old gods. Conflicted between his Japanese heritage and admiration for Abdiel, Ichido eventually sides with her and becomes a Nahobino as they join the race for the Throne of Creation. It's hard to discuss Ichido without discussing Abdiel since their relationship is pivotal for each other's development. If you speak with Ichido throughout the game, he refers to himself as a failure and says his family life at home is difficult since his parents may as well be divorced. All these factors contribute to him feeling unimportant and like a failure. In his pursuit of meaning, he meets Abdiel, who provides him with a new lease on life. She She teaches him what strength actually is, where to get it, protects him with demons, and provides him with a path forward, and this relationship goes both ways. Before realizing Ichido had Abdiel's knowledge, she devoted her sense of duty, ethical beliefs, and demons to protect him, and when she felt lost after the summit, Ichido encouraged her to keep going when she was on the Kia Slam camp. Ichido and Abdiel have an incredible relationship and are, in my opinion, the highlight of the Canon of the Creation route. Seeing Ichido evolve from an insecure demon summoner to a major alignment representative through inheriting Abdiel's knowledge makes this a strong story for both of them. Another character I absolutely adore is Aogami. Aogami spends the entire game learning about human nature and mankind's behavior. He discusses his opinion on major narrative events with you throughout the game, and his additional dialogue in the Demon Hunt is great here as well. He questions why we do things and what we seek to gain before realizing that humans are irrational creatures. Another aspect of his character that I adore is how he asks for your opinion on matters throughout the game. While he doesn't necessarily evolve throughout the narrative, his willingness to support whatever worldview desires speaks volumes about his character. Something that really caught me off guard with him is how well he recontextualizes SMT as a series. If you're a series veteran or have played a few of the other games, we're all numb to the classic law, chaos, and neutral endings by now. This is a constant in Megaten games and has been a series mainstay for some time now. Aogami asking us how Yakumo sees the world really made me step back and reflect on the absurdity of these events. For example, Ichido went from a high school student to dying for what he believes in. If I were to go outside and ask someone if they were willing to die for someone they literally met maybe a week ago, they'll look at me like I'm crazy, right? And that's the point. As a result of this, and similar to Ichido and Abdiel's relationship, Aogami becomes someone you mentor as he tries to empathize with mankind through your worldviews. However, like I always discuss on this channel, the issue with mankind comes with our biased perspective and bounded rationality. Solutions to mankind's problems are often selected due to timeliness rather than sustainability. Planting this modus operandi with our biased viewpoints turns Aogami into a metaphor for mankind and our own shortcomings. The reality is that we'll always be altruistic and informed by experiences we choose to derive value from. For these reasons and us serving as a mentor to Aogami, I believe he's a fantastic character. I don't know what the trope is called where machines slowly become humans, but it's one of my favorite things in media. I love how these characters force us to question our own morality, hypocrisies, and all of our values. While we're talking about hypocrites, let's quickly discuss Yakumo and Nuwa. Yakumo and Nuwa serve as this game's neutral alignment representatives. They immediately identify themselves as enemies of Bethel and Lucifer's army as they destroy angels and demons alike. Their beliefs, more so Yakumo's beliefs if we're being honest, is that humanity has suffered enough from demons' existence and wishes to simply eradicate them. He believes mankind is strong enough to stand on its own and that demons are solely responsible for all of their problems. Thus, he plans to destroy the throne of creation, preventing the forces of law or chaos from shaping the world. Yakumo and Nuwa also feel like a classic representative with a clear philosophy and a clear hypocrisy. While Yakumo feels mankind is strong enough to stand on their own, his reliance on Nuwa's demon entirely contradicts his logical foundation. Once I wrap my mind around their dogma when I reach Ginza, this flaw couldn't be ignored. SMT doesn't usually challenge their alignment representatives' thinking, and I wasn't expecting them to start now. Anyways, I'm mostly cool with them. I love how Nuwa fleshes out Yakumo's impetus for his actions in Taito and how he's constantly breaking into Bethel, Japan's HQ for intel. I can't imagine him being quiet with how commanding his presence is all the time, and that unfortunately wraps up the good characters. The rest of the characters are either underdeveloped or simple plot devices. Sahori and Lamu embody this issue, so let's start with them. You see Sahori in the opening. She gets bullied, Tao asks how to help her, and I quote, best friend, struggles with what to do. Sahori becomes an Ahobino with Lamu and dies. Like, we don't know anything about this character at all. She gets bullied, she becomes an Ahobino and dies. She dies as fast as she's introduced. There's no time to develop or build a relationship with her since she's a plot tool, but I guess this is why Lamu pairs perfectly with her. Lamu is a demon that comes from the netherworld in search of the individual bearing his knowledge. After finding Sahori, they become a Nahobino and they die together. Not only is this arc too short to leave an impact, but nothing he describes carries any weight since we have no idea the significance of a Nahobino and why he wants to become one. I could be stupid here, but I was still coming to terms with what being a Nahobino actually meant. We'll revisit this more in depth later. While we're talking about Sahori and Lamu, let's quickly revisit Sahori's best friend Tao. Tao is one of the first faces you see in one of your friends. After making your way back to Tokyo, she saves you from Abdiel, debriefs you on Tokyo, explains God's miracle, calls herself a saint because she's had power since she was young, claims Sahori as her best friend, you save students together, and then she dies dies before being reincarnated as the Shin Megami Tensei. She's obviously a good person, but like, who are you? She literally dies as she's starting to develop. She felt like an important stranger with a good heart who eventually leads you to the Empyrean. Her character is more fleshed out than Sahori and Lamu, sure, but that's an awful baseline given other characters' outstanding writing in the series. While we're discussing your friends, both Atsutas are problematic as well. Miyazu serves as the motivation for Yuzuru. She's abducted, saved, and forgotten in the fairy village, and that's all for Miyazu's character. She has a side quest with Kansu, but we'll cover that more later during the Canon of Vengeance discussion. When I was drafting the outline for this video, I was going to describe Yuzuru as a rare steak. The problem with this comparison is that at least you can butterfly it and finish cooking it. Yuzuru, by comparison, might be the poster child for everything that's wrong with this route. Yuzuru is briefly introduced in the beginning, wants to protect his sister, helps supports Koji Mizu's efforts with Bethel. Koji Mizu reveals he's Tsukuyomi and claims Yuzuru bears his knowledge as they march towards the throne. I don't know where to get started. Alright, Yuzuru, in my opinion, has two major flaws. One, he's dangerously lacking in context, and two, he doesn't encounter any drama or anything that really changes him. He clearly cares for his sister, but we don't see this outside of Shinagawa. He also forgets about her in the fairy village as well. Additionally, it would have been remarkable to see how he joined Bethel or learn anything about him. Since he doesn't face much adversity, I believe his actions and willingness to go along with Koji Mizu feels unearned. All of this results in him feeling incredibly one-dimensional, and things only look worse when you compare his development with Ichido's. I don't hate Yuzuru though, he's actually alright, but he's severely lacking pivotal context and character development to justify his actions. The next major issue the canon of creation faces is with the abysmal pacing. Bear with me for a second because this might sound crazy, just hear me out for a second. The canon of creation story doesn't start until here. After defeating the Demon King, Koji Mizu tells everyone that he's planning to defect from Bethel since there's no longer a common threat. After the summit, he reveals his true identity, explains the old gods, the Nahabino's origins, and the significance of their existence pertaining to the throne of creation. So this is all great context answering several questions I had up to this point. But why couldn't this information be dispersed throughout the narrative? These events should have been gradually revealed throughout the game. This context would have built tension and enhanced the magnitude of various moments throughout the narrative. Instead, the game feels largely directionless until defeating the Demon King. Furthermore, this additional context could have entirely recontextualized Lamu's initiative with Sahori. If we knew what the Throne of Creation was and how Nahabino specifically interacted with it, there would have been this sense of urgency with Lamu's actions. Instead, two strangers we were supposed to feel something for, I guess, die. Furthermore, you know an arc is meaningless when you can remove it and it will have no impact on the overall plot. Outside of Tao's death and Ichido and Abdiel's relationship developing, nothing of value happens in Shinagawa. Then again, I probably don't need to point this out since Shinagawa's events were entirely rewritten in the Canon of Vengeance route. Since I brought up Abdiel's name, let's briefly talk about the alignment issues this game has. I could be stupid here, so feel free to ignore this, but none of the factions are cognitively stimulating. They're, unfortunately, very straightforward. Ichido and Abdiel endeavor to uphold God's current order, Yuzuru and Koshimitsu want new gods to be in control, and Yakumo and Nua strive to destroy the throne. Excluding Yakumo and Nua, neither of these factions commit any major issues. If the angels want to preserve the current order, that means Tokyo will be restored and mankind will live. Conversely, Yuzuru, Koshimitsu, and the old gods just want power. We have no idea what that specifically entails, but I guess it's the chaos route because they'll probably disagree or fight over things. Of the three major factions, 66.6% of them have no substance at all. I know I criticized SMT4's endings in my previous SMT video, but at least Merkaba and the Angels had conviction in their hearts. By comparison, SMT5's lackluster alignment development contributes to one of the least thought-provoking alignment decisions I've made in the series. And after I sided with Yakumo and Nua, I realized destroying the throne is irrelevant since it'll come back in a few decades. While we're talking about decisions, let's talk about how they don't mean a thing in this game. As with all SMT games, SMT5 presents you with numerous decisions throughout the game. These decisions serve to assess your ethical stance on morally ambiguous matters before locking you to a route. The issue with the choices in this route is that they don't really mean anything. You can select chaos-leaning decisions and simply choose the law path before stepping foot into the Empyrean. This would have been fine if they didn't include any decisions until the end. Instead, Atlus has decisions throughout the game to provide you with the illusion of choice. All of them are inconsequential, and it makes me wonder why they are even included. Decisions in this game feel like a checkbox or something that they had to include because the title is Shin Megami Tensei. I'll stop complaining about this because I think you all get the point and probably feel the same way that I do. Alright, I've been talking about the canon of creation for a while now, so let's wrap this up and move on to the canon of vengeance. To bring this full circle, I believe the story has an interesting premise and has a few characters that I really enjoyed, but it's hard to look past the disjointed narrative and its overall poor execution. If Yuzuru and more of the cast received additional development, if we had more context earlier, if the story was better paced, if the endings had thought-provoking ramifications, and maybe if the factions were actually developed, this story maybe could have been something special. Instead, this narrative feels like wasted potential. With all my thoughts finally out about the canon of creation, let's shift gears and discuss the vastly improved canon of vengeance. So, if you were like me and never played the original SMTIV and you played the canon of creation and vengeance back to back, you probably had the same jarring experience that I did. This story was such an improvement that I was having a hard time believing that this game had the same writers. I'm not sure if the canon of creation was a byproduct of deadlines or the pandemic, but the canon of vengeance fixes almost every problem I had with the original. Let's start with Tao since I gave her a hard time earlier. The canon of creation is primarily centered around Tao and Yoko and how their experiences shape them. Tao receives a ton of new character development and her relationship with Sahori is now actually fleshed out. Between the conversation on the rooftop with the three of you and her willingness to help Sahori get her revenge, their friendship doesn't feel so far-fetched anymore. Additionally, this route's inclusion of your friends joining the party allows us to see how events shape them as well. With Yoko mostly steadfast in her beliefs, the story really focuses on challenging Tao's beliefs throughout the narrative. While Yoko may seem condescending or even patronizing at times, she sincerely wants to learn the origins of Tao's optimism and why she trusts the angels. From the beginning, Yoko establishes her strong beliefs and is willing to challenge Yakumo's ideals immediately. This can result in her feeling hard-headed and standoffish initially, but she begins emotionally opening up and learns to value aspects of mankind throughout your time together. Her shift in tone can be felt when Miyazu is kidnapped by the Kadistu and her willingness to help the team while remaining pragmatic. Nevertheless, she will constantly question whether the angels are on the side of humanity or if we're just a means to an end to them. Furthermore, after building a relationship with you and Tao and learning that mankind isn't beyond saving, she eventually finds something to protect. The largest point of tension occurs when Massimo reveals he's been turning humans into salt. To explain the relevance here, we need to quickly discuss the Kadistu. The Kadistu serve as this route's main antagonist. They've been abducting people and wreaking havoc across Tokyo to gather Makatsuhi throughout the story. They plan to use this Makatsuhi to summon Tiamat to destroy the world, with Yoko serving as the goddess. Given their nefarious nature, they're the assumed culprit behind humans and demons turning into salt. However, all of this changes when the team meets Mastema. Massimo reveals the angels are responsible for this, but they have a reason for doing so. He tells everyone this was done to prevent the Kadistu from harvesting Makatsuhi from humans, which are the main source of it. He proceeds to demonstrate this by turning Ichido into salt. After this, he provides the team with an ultimatum. He says he will return humans and demons to their proper form if the team eradicates the Kadistu. He sees the Kadistu as a threat to God's order and is aware of Tiamat's destructive nature as well. Reluctantly, the team agrees to these terms and everyone is impacted differently by this. Yoko uses Mastema's approach to legitimize her bigotry and Tao interprets this as a mistake. Tao believes everyone makes mistakes and is willing to give the angels another chance since she believes demons and humans can get along. While this isn't the most morally gray decision in the series, it adds another layer to the faction Tao inevitably sides with. These morally ambiguous decisions are one of my favorite things about SMT stories. SMT's narratives do an exquisite job crafting ambivalent scenarios with the intent of understanding who's behind the controller. While this isn't the most morally gray decision, like I said earlier, I'm just happy that it exists and there's something to ponder in this game. Additionally, this event goes a far way in developing Tao's stance on the world. When I was playing through the Canon of Vengeance, I was worried this game would commit the same mistake of not developing their factions like in the Canon of Creation. Instead, the angels are now clearly painted negatively, and players will have to consider whether they can forgive Mastema's actions before siding with Tao. If you do forgive Mastema's actions and see them as just, Who's to say he wouldn't do something like this in the future to preserve God's order? The canon of creation was devoid of these ethical hurdles, and I'm so happy that they're back. In parallel with Tao's superb development, Yuzuru is actually a character with motivation and depth now. In addition to occasionally being a party member, it's demonstrated how much he values his sister and how willing he is to sacrifice anything to protect Tokyo. His relationship with his sister is on full display when he blames Dazai for her getting kidnapped, when he attacks everyone to save her, and his mixed emotions when she willfully takes shelter with Kansu for protection. We also get to see how much she cares for Tokyo when he joins the team to prevent Yakumo and Nuwa from gathering Makatsuhi. All of these new events not only develop him, but also shows him beginning to doubt God's order. Yuzuru, like the rest of the cast, goes through emotional events, changing his perspective on the current world. Watching him develop and experience these traumatic events ultimately make his death feel noble and moving. At the end of the day, Yuzuru had a big heart and wanted to protect Tokyo and his sister above all else. This is probably a statement of the obvious, but Atlus did an incredible job rewriting this character. Yuzuru evolved from a whatever character into something relatable, making his death hit really hard, even though everyone always dies in the series. The only issues with this new route are Ichido and the number of endings. Ichido was one of my favorite characters from the original route. I believe he had the best development of the original cast and most believable actions conversely. However, when looking at his Canon of Vengeance incarnation, he's a bit strange. He mostly follows the same development path, but most of this development with Abdiel occurs off screen and with Mastema after being turned into salt. Insecure about not being a Nahobino, Mastema discovers Abdiel's knowledge within him and shares that he has a higher purpose, and then kills Yuzuru to prevent him from becoming a Nahobino with Tsukuyomi. This shift in character, especially if you haven't played the Canon of Creation, is too abrupt in my opinion. So this is where I kind of scratch my head. My guess would be that Atlus assumes you play the Canon of Creation route before playing the new route. If you have, his development makes implied sense. We know Ichido builds a relationship with Abdiel before siding with her, but we don't see this directly in the Canon of Vengeance route. Instead, Ichido tells us about this relationship, and while I would be okay with this if he was a side character, he's supposed to be a main character. Then again, I could be overreacting here. Maybe there are players who never played the creation route who didn't feel this abrupt shift of character. My personal gut reaction when I saw this scene was they should have integrated this Vengeance story into the original, but my headcanon is they realized the Canon of Creation route was already too far gone. Then again, Atlus adding additional plot to their game seems to warrant mixed reception, so this might have been for the best. Anyways, at the end of the day, all I'm trying to say is going from this to this is kind of crazy in my opinion. I also have two very minor nitpicks that I'm curious if anyone else thought about. After Ichido and Abdiel kill Yuzuru, why would they let you live? Sure, you don't have Aogami anymore, but you also demonstrated the potential of becoming a Nahobino, so why not close off all loose ends? The other issue is with the knowledge needed to become a Nahobino. There is a huge plot point around whether someone is eligible to become a Nahobino contingent upon knowledge. When you become a Nahobino with Tsukuyomi, does this mean you have his knowledge? I don't know what the answer is, but the new outfit and battle check make up for it, so honestly, who cares? Alright, let's quickly talk about the endings, discuss my final thoughts on this route, and wrap this video up because we've been here for a while. I don't have much criticism to add to the endings. I think they're an improvement as Tao and Yoko allude to their ideal worlds throughout the game, and Yoko's in particular is a pretty refreshing ending when compared to other Chaos endings in the series. I did find it strange, however, the team opted to include only 2 endings instead of the standard 3 to 4. I'm just happy that both characters were developed this time around and they weren't as ambiguous as the original's Chaos ending of "we'll fight eventually soon TM." When we take a step back and look at what this route provides, it's difficult to deny the clear upgrade in quality from the original. This scenario resolves the writing, pacing, world building, and overall development the Canon of Creation was simply lacking. The Godistu provide key context to the Nahobino and foreshadows future events. Yuzuru is actually an interesting character now. Your decisions finally mean something. Yakumo gets called out for being a hypocrite and drops out. Yoko and Tao have an excellent relationship, and Miyazu's character development is hilariously still an optional side quest. The only issues I have with this new route are the number of endings and Ichido's development, and the latter is still much improved when compared to Yuzuru's development in the original route. To be clear, if you plan to play SMTIII once, just play the Canon of Vengeance route. This, in my opinion at least, is the definitive way to experience this game's narrative and a great comeback story for the team. Looking at Shin Megami Tensei V holistically, there are things that I love and things that I can't stand. I'm honestly pretty mixed on this game, maybe ever so slightly leaning towards a positive outlook. In my opinion, I believe this game is trying to accomplish what Resident Evil 4, Call of Duty 4, and Breath of the Wild achieved back in their day. SMT5 is Atlus's attempt at evolving its core formula to appeal to a broader audience, and with the Persona games exploding in popularity and the Megami Tensei series running since 1987, I can't blame them. This shift in overall design philosophy will resonate and introduce new fans to the series, and we already have proof of this game's success. But, no pun intended, Atlus is playing a dangerous game here. Appealing to everyone usually results in appealing to no one. Smoothly making this transition or gameplay evolution is incredibly difficult, which is why I give credit to developers who successfully do this. In SMT5's case, while the combat is exceptional and the story is mostly there, I can't ignore Atlus greenlighting the canon of creation with the original release. I can't ignore the lack of atmosphere. I can't ignore the tone of the game, and I can't ignore an overwhelming majority of the monotonous side quests. All of these shortcomings bring me back to something Kazuyuki Yamai said when developing SMT4. In my SMT4 video, I cited how he stressed the importance of preserving Koji Okada and Kazuma Kaneka's vision of SMT to the development team. In my opinion, Kazuyuki Yamai and Eiji Ishida have excellent interpretations of Okada and Kaneka's vision for the series. This can be felt through the narrative, world, exposition, atmosphere, and the incredible world building in Strange Journey and SMT4. Nevertheless, things are different in 2024. Neither Koji Okada nor Kazuma Kaneko work at Atlus anymore, so it's up to Kazuyuki Yamai and Eiji Ishida to carry the torch, but time may be catching up to them as well. Both of them are credited on 1999's Mach X for the Dreamcast. 99, as of writing the script, was 25 years ago. I don't know these two personally, so this is mostly speculation, but most employees want to get promoted and take on different roles as they become more senior in their careers. Although they're probably working on Metaphor Refantasio, or Refanta, however you say it, they've been at Atlus for a very long time now, meaning Shigeo Komori and Shinjiro Takata will probably receive the metaphorical SMT mantle, and with this being the best-selling SMT game, can you really blame Atlus? This subtle shift in design direction has been rewarded with incredible sales and critical reception, but it's hard to deny that something's missing despite their newfound success. I don't like having strong opinions on games I haven't played, so I'm ready to catch some play for what I'm about to say. When Persona 3 Reload was announced, I was excited to see this game receive the remake treatment. As the game entered its marketing cycle and more of it was revealed to us, this shift in tone and atmosphere from Fez to Reload became clearer and clearer. I've heard great things about the story, additional moments between the cast, and many consider this to be the definitive version of the game. However, the tone, atmosphere, and feel were things that I adored about the original, which may be gone. As a friendly reminder, these are all observations since I haven't played the game. I'll play the game eventually, but episode Aegis, the season pass, Persona 3 Portable getting, and I quote, an enhanced re-release, Atlus re-releasing games with season passes, and me selfishly yearning for Atlus to develop something brand new, it's hard for me to get on board here. Anyways, what I'm really trying to get at here is the tonal shifts from Persona 3 Fez to Reload can be felt with SMT4 to SMT5 Vengeance as well. At the end of the day, evolution is critical for preserving the future. My hopes and aspirations for Atlus's future are that they respect the IPs that have bolstered their success. It's an incredibly fine balance to walk, but hopefully they continue listening to new and old fans as their brands expand. Atlus, you have created countless incredible worlds, narratives, and characters that millions of fans worldwide are clearly passionate about. My criticisms aren't from a place of malice. I believe you're one of the premier JRPG studios, and I'm eagerly awaiting your future releases. Because of this and everything we've discussed today, I hope the team listens to our constructive feedback with SMT5 Vengeance and even Soul Hackers 2. I'm convinced Atlus has the potential to make the best JRPGs on the market, but whether they live up to their potential depends on if they listen to constructive criticism. All right, time for the best part of the video. So I have no idea ever how my videos are going to be received. Like, I thought the SMT4 video would have been a bit more controversial, and you know, we've had some fun discussions in the comments, but I'm really not sure how my take on SMT5 is going to go. So, you know, hopefully everyone's respectful and, you know, you guys appreciated me presenting my thoughts on the game. Because I do like this game, but there are some issues that kind of like nag at me, honestly. So Anyways, thanks for making it so much to the end of the video. Big shout out to the channel members for making this video possible. As always, please consider becoming a channel member if you like what I do on this channel. And sorry this video took so long. Getting through like both of the routes back to back and having time to let them both marinate was a lot of game to play, quite frankly. And yeah, it was a lot. So hopefully you enjoyed the content and some questions for the future. Did Vengeance fix all of your guys' problems with the original? Is SMTIV now your favorite? Was I overly critical on the game? Who's your favorite demon? Which ending did you get? Which SMT game should I play next? And what would you like me to cover next if it's non-SMT related? Speaking of, the next couple of videos are probably going to be nothing SMT related at all. There's some other projects that I want to cover on the channel, maybe like the Silent Hill 2 remake that's coming out and some other stuff. So, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoy the content, do all the YouTube stuff with likes and all that stuff, and I will catch everybody later.